What's a girl boner?
A girl boner is when a woman or a girl who's, a teenager or something is just feeling excited about something. For adults, it means feeling turned on. And when I grew up, I learned that boys would get turned on and excited about things. And I learned some positive things about having like a boy's body, but I didn't really learn happy, positive things about being a girl. I learned some things that seemed scary, like I was gonna bleed and have cramps, and I didn't hear anything happy or positive. And so when I learned what the term boner meant, just boys on the recess chatting, I was like, oh, I learned what that was. And I thought there has to be something like that for me. And I never learned about it until I was, an adult. And so learning about my body and learning about pleasure and how to feel good about yourself is really what helped me thrive as a person. So I try to carry that on. It's supposed to be like a fun, upbeat term. I'm excited about something.
But you didn't really get a boner, right?
Well, actually, if you have a clitoris, you do get the equivalent of like a penis erection.
Really?
Yeah, when you're sexually turned on. Most of it's on the inside, though. Like most of the clitoris is internal, so it does get large as well. We just don't see it. We don't, we can hide ours easier.
You feel it, but you don't see it.
Right.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it is amazing. It totally is.
I noticed that women nowadays are into stuff like that. They want to feel what men feel. And so men tend to, men have been, well, not all men, but some men have been taught to make women feel that way. But I notice women who are getting that way, whatever.
Yeah.
They're becoming men because it's abnormal for a woman to climax and all that kind of stuff, right? And that women who are becoming that way are like men. Have you noticed that?
I've heard that take on it, that women are being more like men.
Because it's not natural for a woman to be that way. It's natural for a man to be that way. But a woman has to make herself be that way, which makes her become like a man.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Yes,
What do you think?
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective. I've heard. Definitely some folks believe that. I think that naturally we are built for pleasure and these things, but we learn a lot of things that teach us the opposite. So I think it's more, people telling us we need to be skinny and we need to have big boobs and present our sexuality in a certain way. And I think there's all these kind of rules that get put on us and we get sexualized in ways that don't feel good to us. And so what I see more of is women wanting to have these conversations and being able to learn about their bodies so that they do have good experiences. I don't think that women are trying to be like men. I think they're trying to be more authentic, in themselves. And it's not about like, sometimes people think that sexual empowerment or sex positivity is about like having as much sex as you can. And that's a myth, I think it's really about embracing your sexuality, however that looks. It might mean that you don't have any sex. It might mean that you have more than one partner. It might mean that you save sex for marriage. Like your value system is a huge part of it.
If women never tried to make themselves be that way, they never tried to be like men in that way, and just naturally be a woman, just be a woman, naturally grow up being a woman and let things happen naturally, would they be into that like that?
I think they would be.
You think they would be unhappy?
Well, yeah, I think we've seen in culture over time and throughout history, when women are told that they are not supposed to enjoy sex. Like, for example, I interviewed a woman who grew up in a religious cult, and she was taught that sex is not supposed to be pleasurable for a woman.
Right.
And it was really, really hurtful to her. So she couldn't enjoy sex when she did have a husband, and she wanted to have a loving, intimate relationship, and they wanted to have kids, and her body would just tense up, and she couldn't even allow for intercourse to happen. So I think it is a very natural thing to let ourselves, experience pleasure and evolve. It's just really hard when we hear these wonky messages. Like I said, like, oh, you're either a slut or you're a prude, right? I
Right.
don't think that's true. I think we're all just people, and
That's amazing.
yeah.
Women in the good old days, before the whole movement of women and stuff like that,
Mm.
normal women were not into sex like that. They just had sex. It was like a bang, 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 thank you, ma'am, kind of thing. And everybody was happy. It lasted
Were
a minute
they?
or two.
Yeah.
And the women were satisfied, the men were satisfied.
Oh.
What changed?
That's a really good question. Well, I think if you enjoy the wham bam thank you ma'am, that's great.
Right.
If you want to enjoy that and it works for you and your partner, that's great. I, I personally don't think that, I think a lot of people were unhappy. They just didn't talk about it. I think a lot of women, they were growing up with these rules around them and they felt very restricted. And so there was this word frigid, right? Like you.
Oh, yeah, I remember that word.
Yeah. And, I've spoken to women in their 80s and 90s who tell me that they had these desires and they always felt like they couldn't express them or they didn't have a word. They couldn't see their sexual identity represented in other women because no one was talking about it. So they felt very lonely and depressed and anxious. They weren't happy in their relationships. So I think there's been a lot of growth. I think there's still a lot of problems, but I think that there's also been more freedom, and I think it benefits men a lot. Because if a woman knows how her body works, then, because I think that guys, they want the woman they're with, if they're married to a woman, they want that woman to feel good. They care about her. So I hear from male listeners all the time they really want to know these things because they also didn't learn about women's bodies growing up.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So sex is supposed to be pleasurable. There's a natural enjoyment, natural pleasure.
Yeah.
But it's not supposed to be pleasure. It's just lightweight pleasure.
Like a more serious pleasure, you're saying? Like,
yeah, kind of. You got to have some pleasure in it.
Yeah.
In order to make everything happen. But it's not supposed to be to the point you go away from your natural self to make it happen.
Oh, where it kind of consumes your whole life kind of thing? Yeah, and you know what's interesting? I think that the more we try to tell people not to be sexual or sex is bad or women shouldn't be sexual, I think it's easier to get obsessed with it. You know, I think that we're not so focused on it when it's a natural part of our lives. So, I think there can be very pleasurable, I don't like the term casual sex personally.
Right.
Because I don't think sex is casual. I mean, I think you're doing something very intimate with someone. And even if you're not in a relationship with that person, you're not married, I think there should still be a lot of respect and care and honesty. You know, you shouldn't say, because I grew up thinking any person I had sex with, I'm supposed to marry them, which led me to some not great relationships. Right. You know, so I think it's helpful for us to have transparency and learn about things like boundaries and communication and consent. But yeah, I agree with you that it shouldn't be this flippant nothing. You know, I think it's an important thing, but it shouldn't be everything.
Right.
Yeah.
If you're not married and ready to make children, is it necessary to have sex? Why would you need to have sex if you're not married and you're not ready to make children? Why would sex be necessary?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know if necessary would be the word. I think it's very important to some people. It's not very important to other people. But there is something really beautiful about that connection you can forge with somebody. I think you can learn a lot about your body. Now, you can learn about your body through self-pleasure too. If you are interested in using a sex toy or just learning about your body through sensual massage, human touch can be very important, but sex is not the only way to accomplish those things. I do think it's helpful, especially if you didn't learn anything about sex, to learn something so that you can understand your body, so that if, let's say you decide that you want to save sex till you're married.
Right.
Ideally, you know how your body works and you know about sexuality enough that you can make for a more pleasurable experience once you are married. Because what I find is some people who do save sex for marriage, they also unfortunately didn't ever have the opportunity to learn anything about their anatomy or about what feels good for them. And then sex can be really scary and challenging. They get married and they heard, oh, it's supposed to be wonderful, and then it hurts.
Amazing.
You know, like it shouldn't hurt. Sex is supposed to feel good.
One of the quick things I think about that, and you're right, men love turning their wives or their girlfriends into sluts. They want you to do, they'll make you do whatever they want you to do, because the more you become a slut, or what they call whore, the better pleasure, more pleasure men get. So men love turning women into sluts, into whores. How come women, and there are some women that don't like it for their husband or boyfriend to turn them into a slut. They don't like that.
Okay.
But why do a lot of women today seem to love being turned into sluts?
So by slut,
Because
do you mean?
men gonna always see you as a slut. He may not tell you that, but in his mind, he know, I have this slutty wife or this slutty girlfriend.
Oh.
But the woman say, oh,
Yeah.
I'm being pleasured, I'm being this. But he sees her as a slut. And when the slut ran out with her, he's gonna go and find another woman and turn into a slut. Women don't mind being sluts.
So when you say slut, do you mean someone who's really into sex?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I think it's interesting. I think that I don't think a man can turn a woman into a slut.
Oh, they can do it.
Yeah, how does it work?
Because they make you do it all kind of ways, all kind of normal ways, abnormal ways, and blah, blah, blah.
Okay. So I don't think anyone should ever make someone do anything sexually.
Well, when I say make, I don't mean like they abuse you, tie you down. They know how to make a woman become a slut and make her do
to feel pleasure. But you mentioned pleasure, so that's good. I mean,
why is it that women don't mind being sluts today when it comes to sex?
It's interesting. The term slut has gone through a whole history. Like, it used to be a really always negative word.
Right.
And some women have reclaimed it.
Yeah, I know.
And said, yes, it sounds like you know. Maybe some women who are really into sex, they talk about it. They're very out there with how much they love sex. And I think that can be great and healthy. And I also think women should have the option to not have to be super into sex, or to, maybe there's a period of your life, because I think this is true of all genders, is like there are times of your life that you're not going to be as interested in sex. Maybe it's stress, maybe it's you aren't sleeping enough, maybe it's, it could be so many different things. So I think that there's more freedom for folks to express themselves as they want to, but hopefully it's a mutually agreed upon thing. It makes me sad to think that a man might see his partner or his wife as someone who's only into sex, because I think we want to be three-dimensional people, who have personalities and bring so much more to the table.
Amazing.
Than that.
Do you know who Amber Rose is? You ever heard of her?
Oh, yes, I do. She started the Slut Walk.
Right. I remember she started the Slut Walk, and I interviewed her. And she had this whole, don't care, we slut, we do what we want, blah, 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 right?
Yeah.
And then, but she had a change of heart.
Okay.
She realized that it was wrong to present yourself as a slut and to encourage other women to be sluts. And she realized she didn't know what she was doing at the time.
Okay.
And I noticed that a lot of women regret later being sluts.
That's interesting. I think there is something that can happen where people, and this, I've seen this in other, men too, is like acting out sexually is different than expressing yourself sexually in a healthy way. And I have heard from people who feel like, they were acting out because they'd gone through some trauma or something like that. And I don't think that's shameful or regretful. That just is something that they had to go through. And I look more at the trauma as being a really bad thing in that case.
Yeah.
Do you find that the men who, as you were saying, like they turn them into sluts, do they also feel regret about how they were viewing the women?
Not really.
Oh, interesting.
And men see sex in a different way than women see sex. Well, women are different now a little bit, but men see sex as pure pleasure, pure sex, and it doesn't matter. They do whatever they do to get that thrill, right? And women used to see it in a different way than men do. And so that's why when men create one slut, whether it's his wife or a girlfriend, it's not, after a while, that slut going to be boring. I'm using the word slut because that's how they see it, right?
Okay.
And but after a while, that slut won't be enough. So they'll go find another woman and create a slut.
Maybe they should just get one of those sex robots. Have you heard about those?
No.
Yeah, they're now making these robots. They're built like people with AI intelligence.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah. Well, then they're not hurting someone.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Is sex love?
I don't think sex is love, but I think sex should be loving. And I think sex can be a beautiful part of love. And I also think you can have a beautiful love without sex.
You can.
Yeah.
Without it, right?
Totally. Yeah, totally.
Do a lot of women feel that way, that you could have a good relationship, beautiful love without the sex thing?
I think so. Yeah, and I've heard from men who also feel that way. I think that, you know, most people, sex is an act, and we all want love in our lives, you know? So
right.
We might have that activity, but what would we rather have? An activity, or to feel that intimacy and
love,
that closeness and that love? And I think it's really powerful for everybody, all adults, to have.
And so how did you come up, tell me again, how did you come up with this title, Girl Boner?
Yeah.
You just sitting around one day, walking down the road.
Thinking about girl boners.
Right.
That's what I do.
You're walking down the road, you're like, you know what? I'm going to start a show called Girl Boner.
That is an excellent question, Jesse. So really, I mean, I was only like 11 or 12 the first time I had curiosity about, I wasn't having those, the boners we talked about at that time. But I just remember that's when kids started talking about erections and boners.
Right.
And it was something just curious to me that we could learn these positive things, that a boy could grow up into be a man and then he could have pleasure, and that a girl could grow up into a woman and have periods. Like it didn't make sense to me, so I wondered. And then when I was in my late teens, I was in the fashion industry, and I ended up developing an eating disorder and really struggled with poor body image and depression and stuff. And what ended up helping me the most, like I went to therapy, I tried all the different things that are supposed to help you, but one day I was in a college class and we started talking about sexuality. And I realized it was the first time I'd ever really talked out loud about sex. Yeah. Like you weren't supposed to talk about it where I grew up. And so that really made me curious. Like, why didn't I learn more about my body? I didn't even know what a clitoris was at that time. I had sex. I had one serious partner who I thought I would marry, and we did not stay together. But we didn't talk about sex either. And so I started getting really curious. And so later, when I built my writing career and really grew in my own self-acceptance, I realized that this was a missing conversation that more people were starting to talk about, and certainly more now. But I felt like, especially when it comes to women and also queer people not embracing their body, like we need to learn how to live authentic lives and to be able to express our desires and also our boundaries if we do feel like someone is treating us, like objectifying us, to be able to talk about it. I think that's important.
Oh, okay. So it's normal for men to have orgasms, right? But it's abnormal for a woman because she has to make herself have it, where men have it naturally, right?
Well, women's orgasms are natural too, but it can take longer sometimes. Right. And certainly there are more obstacles because let's say there is a woman who feels like she's always been treated like a slut, as you were saying. Like maybe that wouldn't make me feel comfortable in my body, right?
Knowing that she's been treated like a slut.
Yeah, if I had always been treated that way, like if someone looked at me and they didn't see a person, they just saw
a slut.
Yeah, if all they saw was like someone they could use for sex or something, that doesn't make me feel good. So yeah, orgasms are harder when you don't feel good about yourself. but they're
Or they're
natural.
harder for women because they're not natural. They have to make it happen.
Well, I
Is
think
that possible that God didn't make women to have orgasm?
I actually don't think that's possible because did you know? So you're familiar with like the clitoris? It's like the part of anatomy that it's the only part of a body that's designed only for pleasure.
Right. Absolutely.
So yeah, and so I don't think that would have been created. If you have a clitoris, you're supposed to have pleasure. So I think orgasms are natural. I mean, girls can have wet dreams. You know, it's a natural thing.
I was taught in school that the clitoris thing that a woman has
Yeah.
is because the woman is created in the image of the man, whereas men are created in the image of God. And so that little clitoris thing is just part of a penis thing.
You know what? They are anatomical equivalents.
Right.
Yeah. So like when people say you either have a penis or you have a vagina, that's not actually, they're not,
Right.
it's penis and clitoris are,
Right.
they're equal in anatomy.
Were you taught that in school?
Oh no.
Oh, you were not?
Oh my gosh. No, we weren't taught anything about pleasure. I mean, we were taught like how, a penis goes into a vagina and that's how a baby is made.
Okay.
And also we were taught don't ever have sex. Don't sit on toilet seats because you might get a sexually transmitted disease.
Right.
And people still learn those types
Yeah.
of things. Yeah.